Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
So, pre-episode, Brad simultaneously coughing and I think it was burping. I'm not sure. We should check that all of your internal organs are still in the right place. And then Evan starts giggling at the end. As I'm doing like the recap of what we're going to, of our like walkthrough for the episode. Evan, what's so funny? I was watching a video of some guy got hit in the face with a piece of sheet metal and someone dubbed a boing sound effect over it. So in case we've ever given you the thoroughly incorrect impression that we have it together, I promise you this is of the norm. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Another remote episode as Brad's body goes through it. TM. Here to talk to you all things Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, and hockey all over the place. Hockey all over the place. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
Going through it. I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
Evan, you ready to do some heavy lifting this episode? Because I am genuinely concerned for Brad's lungs.
No, I'm not.
We're doing better than we were on Wednesday.
Okay, you know what? I thought so, but then you did the cough burp thing at the same time, and I was like, that was unholy. Like, I need to call...
No, that's just because it's a Sunday. That had nothing to do with this illness.
Got it. Yeah, that's fair. At least you got some grace in your day. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we'll talk about the ever-evolving head coaching search, what we know and what we don't know from that. As is usual, we have to glean information from the rest of the league because the Yzerman camp certainly does not leak that out. We'll be talking about those coaches pertinent to the Red Wings and, of course, other teams searching like Philly, Winnipeg, Vegas, what have you. We'll be taking a look at a prospect profile for a really notable defenseman and probably one of those where they're going to be gone before the Red Wings pick. But hey, as we've seen in the draft, anything can happen, and it's worth noting those players who could be in range at 8th overall. Additionally, we are going to be taking a look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Eastern Conference Final that just finished between Tampa Bay and New York, before getting into some predictions and odds on the Tampa Bay Colorado Stanley Cup Final that's upcoming. So quite a bit happening in the world of hockey. Before we do all that, we want to call out the Jamie Daniels Foundation is an organization we're very, very proud to support through our Wings Money on the Board campaign, which was started with our good friend Prashant Iyer. We're hoping to reach that $30,000 mark for fundraising for the 2021-2022 season, and the Calder Trophy announcement will hopefully be the trigger that pushes that over the edge. So thank you all of you who have contributed. We really, really, really appreciate it. The flannels that we made, the Winged Wheel Podcast Mickey Redmond flannels, they are in production. We've almost received all of them, and then we just have to do a few back-end things to get them live for you on our store, and a portion of the proceeds from every sale of all of those flannels, which were, created by popular demand. You didn't really give us a choice, which I'm happy about, will benefit the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So thank you so much for all of your support. And speaking of Prashant Iyer, who I just mentioned, make sure you read the If I Were Steve Yzerman series up on the wingedwheelpodcast.com blog. Part 3 is currently up, and it's all about the NHL draft. So very, very, very relevant right now. Really love Prashant's previous version where he talked about a lot of the head coaches that are available to Detroit of all different types. And now with the draft part as well, really just comprehensive look at a lot of Detroit's offseason. So looking forward to parts 4 and 5. It started as a 3-part series, so I'm hoping for Prashant's sake it ends at 5, but hey, we'll never complain about more content. So check that out. The link will be in the description below. Okay. The Detroit Red Wings still without a head coach. Evan, have you gotten the call yet?
Nope, I am still waiting. I suspect it'll be this week.
Evan, if you got the call, would you tell us?
Nope.
Nah, that's good. You're still a candidate. That's awesome. So we've figured out some more information, as was reported by various people in the hockey world, about the Red Wings head coach. Let's start with David Quinn, former New York Rangers head coach. I think there's been varying opinions on him, and Frank Saravalli reported that he's interviewed with or has talked to the Detroit Red Wings about their vacant head coaching position. So that one was a little bit of a surprise to me, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised to see David Quinn's name pop up again He's been linked to a lot of different teams. It's not only Detroit. So by no means would I put him as a favorite or even a likely contender. But as Yzerman said, he's going to talk to anyone and everyone who could be a fit. So what do we think about the former Rangers coach and in terms of fit, how he would be with Detroit?
Well, when you mentioned David Quinn, or when Sarpali mentioned David Quinn interview with the Red Wings, my immediate reaction was, I have no memory of this man. I could tell you he was the coach of the Rangers, and that was about it. I know that he didn't last a terribly long time there, and they weren't a terribly good team when he was there, but this was when they were in their rebuild. So it could be a case of give him something more to play with, and he could be good. But given where the Red Wings are at in their rebuild, that was around when he was there with the Rangers. So if they didn't want him to see it through, if they didn't want him to see it through there, it gives me pause about why the Red Wings would want to have him see it through here.
Yeah, it was interesting. I agree with you, Brad. It was a little bit of a surprise to see his name. Not that I don't remember much about him. I obviously he was the head coach of the Rangers. I think previously his experience was like one season as assistant coach with the Avalanche. But other than that, largely in the NCAA or the AHL. I did some digging on him and chatted with some people who would know a little bit more about David Quinn. And the general concern that has come up was how he works with, and this is going to be a theme across a lot of potential NHL coaches, how he works with the young kids, not just in terms of like interpersonal relationships and coaching them through, but how he deploys them in the lineup. There was a lot of conversation that I've had with people about, Capo Caco and his struggles with New York. A lot of people think David Quinn and his deployment and handling of him as a rookie has something to do with that. Additionally, Lafreniere, he's obviously turned it on as of late, especially towards the second half of the season. So that's a little bit different now. For a coach who has so much NCAA experience and some AHL experience, but notably doesn't like playing the kids, as it was quoted to me, that's enough to raise a little bit of a red flag, or at least put him in the I'm skeptical column. And again, you have to talk to anyone who's possibly a candidate. And like we mentioned before, people grow and change in their jobs. David Quinn was a first-time NHL head coach, so there's no saying that he can't improve. To make this relatable to Red Wings fans, Jeff Blashill, for a long time, was a first-time NHL coach. Who knows what a change of scenery is going to do for him? So, not ruling anyone out because of that. But in terms of what we've seen so far and it being a little limited, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in David Quinn for me personally. It all remains to be seen.
So, I understand the old school thinking with coaches. And again, since it's going to be a theme, might as well talk about it. About, the old school coaches who don't deploy the kids. And there's logic to that. Don't get me wrong. It's not necessarily a bad thing because, you're an NHL coach. You don't give a shit about next year. You don't care about, is this player going to be a player in 7 years? If we win today, I keep my job tomorrow. So coaches are meant to coach traditionally to win. And the problem with rookies is that their games aren't refined. They'll make mistakes in some of the smaller aspects of the game. There's a reason a lot of rookies come into the NHL. They're poor positionally. They lose board battles. Like the not super important things in the game, but the still important things, especially to coaches. I remember the example we talked about, last year, the year before was why was Darren Helm getting so much more ice time than Evgeny Svechnikov, hypothetically? Well, because Helm was better at the little things and he wouldn't make those mistakes. Even though he couldn't do anything in the offensive zone where Svechnikov could, coaches trust the guy who's not going to make a mistake. So I understand the logic there. Now, if you can get a coach to buy in on, hey, play the young kids, that tends to help the development more. Like you look at Detroit this year, Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider played all 82 games in first line roles, first pair roles, and they are better for it. They could handle it. Not everybody can do that, but Mo Seider made his mistakes. Lucas Raymond made his mistakes, but they are much better players today than they were at the start of the season. but they're superstars, so they might not be the best example. You know who started getting a lot of playing time towards the end of the year and was getting better towards the end of the year? Joe Veleno. So I don't care how the coach deploys him in terms of lines, combos, that kind of stuff. You obviously want them to build lines to match their strengths. You don't want Lucas Raymond playing with Adam Ernie. But the coach can't be afraid to give them ice time. He can't be afraid to let them make mistakes, because I think in the modern NHL, with how talented most young players coming in are, like the gap between, an Adam Ernie and you pluck any random 20-year-old out of junior hockey right now is significant, but not nearly as significant as it used to be. These guys can hang skill-wise just because that's the way they're taught, the way they're brought up now. So if you give them runway to make those mistakes early, the better they'll be for it long term. So if a guy like David Quinn has had a lot of problems with that and he's not going to be that guy, he shouldn't be that guy. Like, we've dumped on Jeff Blashill more than anybody, but Jeff Blashill was the guy who gave these guys the rope this year. He didn't in previous years, but he adapted and, it worked. Not for team success, but that didn't matter this year. So I don't know. We're going to have this hypothetical for every coaching candidate, because everybody's going to say every old school coach is the same way. Oh, Tortorella doesn't play the rookies. Oh, Cassidy doesn't play the rookies. Trotz doesn't play the rookies. Okay, well, we're going to have to live with however this works, and Yzerman's going to have to be damn sure he has his vision laid out clearly for whoever it hires. And again, I don't have the answers. So to kind of circle back to David Quinn, if he has a history of not being that guy, he probably shouldn't be that guy.
Elsewhere within the world of coaches, it was confirmed that Bruce Cassidy has at least talked with or about coaching the Red Wings. So that link shouldn't be a surprise. Think of everything Yzerman said and think of the stature of Cassidy on the coaching market. He's available. His press conference after being fired by Boston was pretty interesting. So I'm curious to see how all of that unfolds. There is, a lot of credence to the rumors that have come out about his clashing with some of the young players on the team, but there's a lot still in question in terms of the exact why of him being let go, the scale of the issues, and whether, they're being used to pull him under the bus, or maybe it is bigger than people are giving it credit for, and there is something there. So still Cassidy linked to the Red Wings. Trotz has still been mentioned as a possibility for the Red Wings. There is the expectation that those teams, those lists might be whittled down soon. I'm thinking Trotz will probably come first just because of how long that process has been going. Teams like the Flyers have been moving along in their interview process, and they'll want to hear back. Same with like the Winnipegs. You don't really know where Detroit is at in their timeline. A little note about that in the Lightning in a second, but you would expect Trotz to start to reach out to those teams that he's definitely not going to go with. I would imagine within the next little while. We're less than a month away from the draft, so that information is going to slowly come out, and probably a little bit of inference is going to need to be made to figure out how that relates to the Red Wings, but we're getting there. So with Trotz, I think we might know soon-ish. Cassidy, there's been a mention that might follow suit, but that one's still pretty fresh. The only other note with Red Wings and coaching is it was noted by Elliot Friedman that a lot of people have mentioned to him that they wouldn't be surprised if Steve Yzerman is waiting basically for the Cup final to be over, because he's going to want to talk to anyone and everyone related to Tampa Bay coaching. So their assistant coaches are, notably and maybe a favorite for the job, Derek Lalonde. And then should also be called out that Jeff Halpern and Rob Zettler are assistant coaches over there. And then let's not forget Benoit Groulx, the head coach of the Syracuse Crunch, their AHL affiliate. So there's a chance Yzerman could have quietly talked to them during the playoffs, during a break. That would just require Tampa Bay's permission really for them to go interview virtually or however they did it. But without knowledge of that, you could just say, yep, there's not going to be a decision made until Yzerman's talked to these guys because he wants a comprehensive process. So, seeing Tampa Bay now move to their third consecutive Cup final on the verge of a three-peat, which is almost unheard of in the modern NHL. Well, it is unheard of in the modern NHL. It's not a big leap to think, Yzerman's going to want to talk to all of these people that he knows well, he's worked or managed maybe directly before, and have a pedigree and proven success over time. So that to me seems like the most reasonable, logical rumor that's come up of the very, very many that have come our way over this.
I mean, it makes sense. You go with what you know. And I don't know exactly all of his interactions with the Tampa Bay assistant general managers, but he's the guy who put Cooper in place. So obviously if they've been working with Cooper, he knows that they're going to at least have aligned somewhat closely philosophically to what Yzerman did in the last coach he hired.
All right. More to come on that, I'm sure. We'll see how that unfolds. I don't think the clock is ticking. I think now with the Stanley Cup Final and Tampa Bay being firmly in there, we might have to wait a little while yet for that to finish. But I think we're going to start to see some pieces move within the broader scheme of the coaching world. Other notable Red Wings news, and one that we didn't mention during the intro, but is probably the biggest Red Wings news to come out over the last little while. Elmer Söderblom, the towering behemoth, has signed his entry-level contract and is officially coming over to North America. So one way or another, he'll be playing in the state of Michigan. Grand Rapids is the likely outcome, with the Griffins probably getting his services next year. But hey, you never know. Could make the Red Wings out of camp too. But it was expected. But Elmer Söderblom signs his ELC. Another big step in the Red Wings rebuild, quite literally, as this is a massive, massive man. What can the Red Wings and the Griffins expect from Soderblom this year?
Reach, length, different weather reports in different atmospheres. No, coming over, I don't know realistically what to expect from him. That's the thing, because SHL, despite talent-wise being pretty close to the AHL, different systems, bigger ice, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think Soderblom's going to come to Grand Rapids and kick the doors down like Jonathan Berggren did. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up 15, maybe 20 goals this year. Cause he's a goal scorer. He's not going to be the guy who's putting up 20, 40 every year. He's going to be a 30, 20 guy at best. But yeah, so as long as Grand Rapids is deploying him as the type of player he is, because I'm still super nervous the Red Wings are going to try and shoehorn him into being just a pure power forward, which he is not. He is a skill forward who just happens to be 6'7", 6'8". If they can teach him to be that while utilizing all of the advantages of being 6'7", 6'8", I'm super excited to see what he'll do next year. But yeah, for the counting stats this year, I don't think it'll be anything significant. I just want to see how he progresses, like I said, as a player.
Yeah, I get that, Brad. Just to give an overview, Soderblom is a massive, massive player and one who kind of plays not like his size. He's been listed at a lot of different heights. Let's take an average of like 6'7", 215. Like that's where he's sitting at. And he stick handles and controls a puck and plays around the net like he's, 8, 9, 10 inches shorter than that, and is much closer to the ice and the puck with how nimble he is, how silky his hands are. That said, what's the biggest issue for players coming over from Europe and adjusting to the North American game? Space, timing, physicality. Sure, Elmer Söderblom's not, this monumental power forward. He's not, Dustin Byfuglien trucking people out on the ice. He's not, bowling over people and just straight crashing his way to the net. But like you said, Brad, if you can lean on those things and use those to influence his game, I think that can be used as a great tool to kind of cut down Elmer Söderblom's transition time. And that's obviously going to be a focus for the Red Wings. Yeah, he was a 6th round pick in 2019, 159th overall. So obviously a big success story for that pick, but he's going to get a lot of development and focus. They know they have something in him, and they've known for a long time they have something in him. Yzerman has said in the past, people have started to notice him over the past season or two, but that stuff that kind of looks almost magical out there, we saw that from day one, which is why we're so high on this guy. So yeah, he's going to have a big focus to get adjusted over there. The adjustment period is why I don't think it's likely, and this isn't a hot take, that he makes the Red Wings out of camp, but I do think he has the tools to kind of make that process easier than a lot of other players in his position.
Yes and no. Because the thing with small players on small ice is it's going to sound overly simplistic. They're still small. They don't take up a lot of space on the ice. They're harder to get to. Soderblom's wingspan is so big, he can't handle that puck in his feet. He takes up space. So the less space he has, the easier the defenseman will be able to close gaps on him, because, you know, this puck enters the zone 3.5 minutes before he does, when he's coming off the rush, when he's, you know, in space. Now along the boards and he's got his ass to the defenseman. Well, yeah, then all of a sudden having that 32 feet of length is going to help him protect the puck, but that's only useful if you get there first, right? Now, will he be a primary puck carrier in the AHL, the NHL? No, he probably not, nor should he be. If you can get him with someone like a Jonathan Berggren who can, you know, enter the zone, set things up, and be the primary playmaker, and then Soderblom can work inside the offensive zone, I think that's his ideal role. And then he can start to use his size to his advantage. So in a lot of ways, in most ways, I should say, it is an advantage for him. But being that big, getting to the smaller ice, there are some more difficulties that are going to be presented to him that he didn't have on the bigger ice.
I'm just happy for Lars.
Yeah, no kidding. He's been the prophet for, as he calls it, the towering behemoth of Elmer Söderblom for a long time. So I know Lars is going to be happy that a lot of the people who might not have had the chance to watch his SHL stuff are going to have a chance to watch him in North America. I'm excited to see how he does in camp. I'm excited to see how he does likely in Grand Rapids. And let's be real, Griffins fans deserve some good stuff. Yeah, they had Berggren last year, but I know a lot of them were expecting Lucas Raymond. So I think he'll have fun in Grand Rapids, and I think Griffins fans will as well, and we'll enjoy watching him there. But again, we'll see. You never know. It could make a splash. I think you have to kind of leave that door open for every Red Wings prospect. But I will just take this moment to say, please, please, please don't apply the Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond path to every upcoming Red Wings prospect. That means Soderblom. That means Simon Edvinsson. Those were atypical, like super, super abnormal. You can't expect that year in and year out. It certainly would be great, and each one is like a resounding success every time it happens. But if, you know, for example, Simon Edvinsson or whoever's drafted 8th overall this year, or wherever the Red Wings end up picking, if they don't make a splash in year one of their, you know, NHL eligibility, so to speak, that's okay, and they could still turn out to be a great player. So just try to temper expectations a little bit. Before we move over here, I do want to call out, Max had a really great article that I forgot to mention last episode, essentially read out player profiles to the prospects at the Combine, and it was a really fun read. I loved seeing what Frank Nazer said about the profile of him. It's fun to see players and prospects push back on some of the notions of their game. You know, Matt Savoy's comments on whether or not he could be a center, I thought were super interesting. And should it move the needle on what your perception is of the prospect? Not necessarily, but I couldn't help but think, you know, for the center conversation, if Matt Savoy isn't firmly out there saying, oh, no, I think I can play center, these people are wrong. And instead he's just saying, I think I can play both and I'll do whatever an NHL team wants me to do. It's not like he's giving up on the center position, but it almost really kind of confirms what a lot of the conventional thinking is around Savoy, which is that he'll likely end up as a winger at the very least to start. So you don't think so? That is
not Savoy. That is absolutely not Savoy punting on being a center. That's him just doing typical hockey player speak. I'll do whatever's in the best interest of the team. Because if he comes out and says, yeah, I'm a center, and then the team goes, oh, he's on the wing, bet he doesn't like it there. He said it's hockey talk. I am here for whatever the team wants. I'm here to be a good teammate. I'm here to be a good employee of insert whatever team drafts me here. That's all that is. That is 1,000% a non-statement.
Look, you're right. And I mean it when I say I'm not using this to paint my picture of these players, but imagine Savoy did come out and say, no, I'm a center. Like, I know why people think that. Of course, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do, but I really think I could be a center at the NHL level. Would that not amp you up and really want Detroit, or make you want Detroit to take him at 8th overall?
See, it depends on the context. So obviously this is in the context of the draft. So if he said that, all I would hear is, oh yeah, I'm a center. Please pick me 3 spots higher. Like, he'd just be advertising himself. Like, no player is going to give their true opinion at this time of year. That's at least not to the public, to the media. You know, you get good context to a lot of things, and players give you fantastic additions to some already public perceptions, right? Which was why Max's article was great. But I don't think they're making any declarations here.
Well, why don't you go read Max's article? Let us know what you think. It's titled, "What Do NHL Draft Prospects Think of Their Scouting Reports?" We asked them on The Athletic Detroit. Always worth the price of admission. A lot of Frank Nazar fans will like it, I feel. Okay. Speaking of prospects, we'll talk about one in just a second here, but first I want to mention that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, a sponsor that gives hockey fans even more excitement in the game. There's so many reasons why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. They're simple to use with great odds on different betting markets, giving you more action every game day. There are tons of fun with unique bet types like same game parlay and exclusive promos on the biggest events. And when you win, you get your winnings safely in as little as 24 hours. Now listen to this. FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Just place a bet on any game, and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win that first bet. If you win, you keep the cash. If you lose, you get up to $1,000 back in site credit. Now, what we want you to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started with that risk-free bet, and be sure to sign up with promo code WWP so they know the Winged Wheel podcast sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code WWP.
Must be 21 and older and present in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, West Virginia, Indiana, Colorado, Iowa, Tennessee, Virginia, or Michigan. First online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable and expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, or Virginia, Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-270-7117 in Michigan.
Okay, let's jump over to the NHL draft here. And there's a defenseman who we haven't really talked about in a concerted way yet. His name is Simon Nemec, and I think he deserves the conversation for Red Wings fans to hear, even though of all players who could fall, and this is a wild draft, I would put him among the least likely outside of, you know, the Shane Wright, Logan Cooley, Uri Slafkovsky tier. Simon Nemec, right-handed defenseman out of HK Nitra. What do we make of him and the splash he's making in terms of defensive prospects this season?
Well, a much different player, but a lot of the same conundrums as Mo Seider had going into his draft. Obviously a very, very good player. Fantastic world championship. Playing in one of the lower level men's leagues in Europe. Still the top Slovakian league. But it's not the SHL, it's not the KHL, it's not Liga. It's not even the Allsvenskan. Like, there's not a lot of data. There's not a lot of comparables from previous years. But he's still a 17-year-old playing in a men's league, putting up ridiculous numbers. He went to the World Championships and had a record-breaking World Championship for a U18 defenseman. So there's no denying his talent. It's just going to be a matter of how does it translate up levels with very little context of past experiences with players in this league. So he's one of those defensemen. Kind of reminds me a bit of Evan Bouchard in his draft year, where there's not a lot flashy about him, but he just does everything so well, and he just reads the play so well. And he's able to translate that intelligence, that calmness in his game into offense. So it's not just like he's the guy who slows the game down to let his playmakers capitalize. He slows the game down. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it. But he's able to control the game and then himself produce the offense as well. He's good in all three zones, great on transition. Obviously, the offensive zone seems to be his calling card so far. So he's one of the highest ceiling prospects in this draft, because that type of player, if they hit at the NHL level, they hit. He can make a huge impact in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, that last point, Brad, is really where I land with Nemec. I agree. coming out of the Slovakian league, you just never know what he's going to do. It's underscouted, so not every underscouted league turns into a Moritz Seider drafted at 6 overall when a lot of teams are now saying they would take him 1 or 2. But there's risk and there's an opportunity to kind of find a market inefficiency here to get, like you said, Brad, a player who's going to hit in a big way at the pro level. Nemec is poised and he's refined and he's a super smart defenseman, and he has the talent and the skill offensively, moving the puck up the ice, really playing in all 3 zones, where I would say he's worth the risk. Yeah, it's in the Slovakian league, but Brad, you mentioned he had a fantastic world championship. Pretty much every step of the way, people have been more and more on board with Simon Nemec as a top prospect because of everything that he's done to prove it at every level that he's been, given the opportunity to. Yeah, look at this in terms of the Red Wings. He shoots right, so immediately you think, well, Moritz Seider's the Red Wings' number 1 right pairing defenseman or right shot defenseman. Yeah, sure. You need more than one good one, though, so that doesn't rule him out for me. There's a different conversation here for centers or left defensemen or whatever, and those are all very valid. But just talking positionally for a second here, he's good enough, and the Red Wings could still use it. His offensive production is fantastic. The way he thinks the game is it's really noticeable. I agree, Brad, that he's not flashy, but the control he elicits over the pace of play, over the ice, the way the puck moves, you really get responsible defenseman who can also be a power play 1 quarterback. That to me doesn't sound completely unlikely for him. It is hard to have a defenseman, not ranked 1 or 2 overall in the entire draft and say this guy should be a top pairing defenseman, but I really do think Nemec should be a top pairing defenseman. I've really come around on him over time.
Yeah, I think if I was going to think of some knocks on his game, it's that his confidence is a bit of a double-edged sword, and I think you kind of see that all the time with guys playing in lower leagues who are going to be in the NHL. They're ultra confident. They know their skill set. The competition they're playing against isn't overly great, and sometimes his confidence can lead to mistakes. But I mean, that is such a small gripe on his game. The only other thing I could maybe think of is he's 6'1", 192 pounds. It's not really that big anymore for NHL defensemen, and he doesn't physically impose himself on other players. That's another tiny gripe that I would have, but overall, his 200-foot game is so good for someone his age, and I don't know. There's not a snowball's chance in hell he's there at 8, in my opinion. I wouldn't even be surprised if he's there at 4.
Yeah, no, I think it was Scott Wheeler who had him ranked 2nd overall, and you can't really knock it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would do that if I was the Red Wings, but if he's there at 8, do you take him over Savoy, Nazar, and whoever your 3rd favorite likely pick is?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, the thing with him is you've just solidified a right defenseman for the next, hopefully, 15 years.
That's the hope. And he plays a super, he's already such a mature player in that, he's responsible and you see his effectiveness in all 3 zones. And I know I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here because I just a few minutes ago said don't expect too much of Red Wings prospects right off the bat. But if he had to pick a player out of the, outside of Shane Wright or Cooley or Slavkovsky, who you're going to say they can come in and make an impact sooner rather than later, you think Nemec would be able to do it. There's a big question mark there because, the Slovakian league compared to the AHL or NHL, that's a big jump. And like you said, Evan,
he's got the confidence to do it. He's the type of guy who would say, I don't care. I'm coming in. I know how good I am, and I'm going to make a splash year 1.
Okay, let's take this hypothetical because he's always chalked up against David Jiricek for good reason, 2 top defensemen, or should be at least in this draft. Jiricek with the knee injury, Nemec, who's been really impressive kind of the whole way through, but coming out of Slovakia. Don't look at this from the Red Wings perspective. Look at this from a team who needs a defenseman, either hand. Who do you rank higher?
Nemec.
Yeah, I do as well.
Up until maybe before the World Championships, I would have said Jiricek. And I don't think Jiricek's done necessarily anything wrong. People are right to be concerned about the knee injury, but that's, if it was devastating, you'd know. But still, I just think Nemec has done so well at every level that you couldn't go wrong either way, but forced to choose, I'd take Nemec as well. Again, I don't see it as likely for him to be available for the Red Wings. Look back at our Cutter Gauthier conversation from last episode. This is a premium position. Red Wings fans might not think so because they just watch Moritz Seider play right hand or play defense on the right side all season, so they think there's not an immediate need. But league-wide, a right-shot defenseman to play on the top pair, think of what Toronto fans would do for that. They would kill. Like, Toronto fans would do anything to have that. A lot of teams would do anything to have that. So that is a premium position. Much like Cutter Gauthier, I think even if he wasn't, a true second or third ranked player in the draft, I think it's very, very, very unlikely, even more unlikely than Gauthier, that he's available for the Red Wings at 8. But, as Prashant said in the If I Were Steve Yzerman article, this is a draft with a ton of variance. So you never know. He could be there.
It's kind of all over the board, but he's a bolt-on top 10. But when you look at the consolidated rankings of those that are updated, he's kind of all over the place in the top 10.
Yeah, well, we'll see. All right, that's Simon Nemec. We are going to continue the series and ramp it up as we approach the draft. It's coming very, very shortly, and we're going to be taking a look at all possible Red Wings prospects around that 8th overall pick. And then we'll do some what if the Red Wings trade up or down talks too, so don't think we're going to not get into that crazy world of hypotheticals as well. Let's jump over to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The Tampa Bay Lightning are going to the Stanley Cup Final. The Rangers, after going up 2-0 in their series, lost 4 straight games, and Tampa Bay now has an opportunity to win their 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup. Absolutely unreal.
But more importantly, Corey Perry has the opportunity to lose his 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup Final.
If the way Tampa Bay ruined their Stanley Cup juju was by taking on a cursed Corey Perry, that would probably be the only satisfying way for Red Wings fans to see a Colorado Stanley Cup win.
Is there any Red Wings fan who's even a little bit happy about these finals? I hate this. I don't want to watch any of it.
Oh, I don't care at all.
I want them to both lose. Like, from a broader non-Red Wing hockey standpoint, this is going to be a phenomenal Cup final. Like, Colorado and Tampa, oh my God, those are 2 highly skilled teams, ultra competitive. It's going to be a really good series, but I want them to both lose so badly. And I think right now in this day and age and the way it's going, I think Colorado's the lesser of 2 evils. So, you hope Darren Helm gets his cup. McKinnon and Landeskog and Makar, they're the type of guys that you can't see them going their whole career without a puck. So, without a cup. So if this is where they knock it out, sure. But yeah, I'm going to enjoy the hockey, but I'm going to hate every second of it.
Yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that. I think what I want as a neutral fan at the very least is 7 games OT for all of them, because for the level that these teams are playing at, that's what we deserve. But that's tough. Here's the thing. Red Wings fans love to hate Colorado. We're about to watch the ESPN documentary on that rivalry. I still maintain the best rivalry in professional North American sports history. You love to hate Colorado. Being out of conference and being in 2 completely different worlds in terms of team talent right now, there's only so much, substance behind that passion. So, yeah, I personally don't wish for any success for Colorado. I would sure like to see Darren Helm, get another Stanley Cup. As a Atlantic Division opponent, do you necessarily want to see Tampa Bay Lightning win a 3rd straight cup? Probably not for a lot of Red Wings fans, but the silver lining to that one is that's a team that was built largely in part by Steve Yzerman's work over a lot of years as GM over there. So you could look at it and say that's just further solidifying Steve Yzerman's legacy and is further testament to what he can do with the Red Wings. The farther away you get from him jumping over the Red Wings, it's been 3 years now, or jumping over to the Red Wings, the less substance I think that argument has. But still, Steve Yzerman did a lot of the work, the architecture the building of that team that took time to find the success that they have now, but boy, are they in it. So unless you're team meteor, I'm just team game 7, all OTs, and what happens, happens.
I'm team meteor.
It's a little bit of the unstoppable force versus the unmovable object in Andrei Vasilevsky. I think it'll be a fascinating final. At least fingers are crossed. I probably just jinxed it, and it's going to be a 4-0 blowout for Tampa Bay.
Blame Evan. If it goes wrong, just blame Evan. Let's talk about Vasilevsky, and let's talk about the Rangers and the Lightning specifically. I understand, and we'll talk more in a second about how this all fits in terms of team play and defense and the support behind Vasilevsky. But is there a more clutch player in sports right now than Andrei Vasilevsky in a potential elimination game? Like, I'm amazed the Rangers got a goal.
They did better than 6 of the previous 7 teams who attempted to score on Vasilevsky in an elimination game. So, kudos to Frank Vetrano, a true unicorn. But Vasilevsky is Mr. Reliable. At worst, he's never going to lose a game for you, which we've seen from many other goalies these playoffs, Mike Smith. But when he's on, he will absolutely steal games. That being said, in game 6, I know it was only 2-1. The Rangers were never in that game. Even when they tied it, they were not in that game. If people want to know what Steve Yzerman means and why he has, we'll call it a type of player that he looks to acquire, game 6 was the shining example of it. These guys are skilled, but they buy in on everything. Stamkos is blocking shots. Kucherov is throwing hits. Anytime the Rangers got the puck in the offensive zone, Tampa was selling out defensively, all 5 guys. But they're good enough when that puck gets down into the other zone. They're pushing offensively because they know they're going to have 5 guys busting ass back if they turn that puck over. So, it's textbook how to win in the playoffs hockey. You can be skilled and you should utilize your skill, but you have to have buy-in from everybody. So if you want to know what it means when, scouts say, oh, he's competitive. Well, yeah, no shit. Every hockey player's competitive. That's the point of the damn sport. Now, this is what they mean. The guys who will go out of their comfort zone and just do literally whatever it takes to win. And, Tampa has put on a clinic of that the last 3 years.
Yeah, Brad, that is such a good point. And if you ever get frustrated with the compete question, it's to the point now where it's almost a self-sustaining system with Tampa Bay. Like when they talk about players getting together, they talk about, Hedman talking to the room and getting it together. They talk about Kucherov, talking to the forward group or his line mates or himself to say, here's what we have to do to win, even though we might be outclassed in X, Y, or Z this series. John Cooper is often talking about it as if he's an uninvolved party. Like he's just spectating in the room, not saying anything. That's obviously not the truth, but they've built and they've fostered this team that is just going to find a way to win however they can. Evan said this the other episode, and I really liked the point he made. The difference in the playoffs, and this is going to sound like a meaningless platitude, but it genuinely does mean something here. The difference in the playoffs isn't about what team stacks up better on paper. It's about what team finds a way to win. And that is so much more, salient or so much more true, especially when you are the perceived underdog in one way or another. And I don't think Tampa were underdogs against the Rangers, but I think Tampa stole 2 wins that could have been Rangers wins this series. 2 goals with very, very late in the game, like under 2 minutes left or whatever it was. That sucks the life out of a team. I don't disagree, Brad. I don't think I don't think the Rangers were really in it in game 6, but the two wins that Tampa Bay won late, I think that just took the life and the soul and the spirit out of the Rangers, especially after they took that 2-0 series lead. For them to lose that way, especially when they had that opportunity to go up 3-0 until Tampa Bay came back that game. That's the difference. That's a difference between a team who knows how to win and just a very good team. And look, I don't think the Rangers stacked up to the Lightning on paper. I think the Rangers with an above average goalie rather than a possible best goalie on the planet right now in Igor Shesterkin doesn't even make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But They had every opportunity to win this series, and Tampa Bay just did what they've done for the past 11 series in a row, which is find a way to win. Yeah, Vasilevsky's clutch, but let's say he's not clutch and he's doing what Brad said, at worst, not losing the game. The defense collapses in around him to support. Kucherov comes up with a phenomenal performance. Hedman shows up. Sergachev ends up scoring a goal to win a game, which, a lot of Tampa fans would have laughed if you said that. They did all this without Braden Point. How do you bet against these guys, man? Colorado is the one team you can take that, but, going back to the Rangers here, you almost think that their 2 games, not to say they weren't deserved, but let's say Tampa wasn't so rusty coming into the series because of their extended break. I don't even know if they go up 2 games. I just think they were outclassed in terms of knowing what it takes to win in these playoffs.
Tampa Bay showed New York and like every other team that they've played so far in the playoffs what it takes to win and what you have to do to win. Like, first 2 games against the Rangers, I thought Tampa looked a little rusty, and then they looked a little bit shocked by the speed of the Rangers. But after that, they settled in and got back to what they do best, and it's basically just been a masterclass in playoff hockey.
They shut down the other team's offense in a way that it's almost frightening. I wouldn't pin that again on Colorado, but it just goes to show what that team is doing to their opponents. Masterclass, unrivaled efforts, gutsy performances. They're all platitudes that would make you roll your eyes when you hear a coach or a commentator that you hate the most say it, or say a podcast host that you loathe. But it's been true time and time again for Tampa Bay. I'm going to take this very, very thin silver lining win for Red Wings fans. I'm happy the same GM who was the architect of a large part of this is in Detroit right now. It took a long time. They had to go through quite a bit of it. We all remember what happened against Columbus with Tampa Bay, but man, they're a dominant force right now. And who knows what's going to happen in these finals? You still have to think that they're in the fold next year too.
That's the thing with Tampa. They're built to be sustainable.
Let's jump into our segment sponsored by the FanDuel Sportsbook, where we take a look at some betting odds, make our predictions based on the Tampa Bay Colorado series, as well as some Stanley Cup odds. So thank you to the FanDuel Sportsbook for sponsoring this segment. And let's get us started. Why don't we take a look at who you bet on to win the Stanley Cup? The favorite still is the Colorado Avalanche at a -180, with the Tampa Bay Lightning at +155. And I honestly can't come in here and say that I have a firm preference one way or another. I just got done saying, how do you bet against Tampa Bay? And you have a chance to take Tampa Bay as an underdog. Imagine you took them 2-0 down against the Rangers, right? So you're coming in at an even slate against the Colorado Avalanche. It looks like they're going to have, their starting goaltender back. A large part of their health will be there. No Kadri after his wrist surgery will be something. They're going to cut it close there. I just don't imagine he's going to be at full health, even if he does miraculously get on the ice. It's going to be an interesting series, and I really don't know which way I lean.
Colorado has lost 2 games in these playoffs so far. I hate betting against Tampa because they're Tampa, but this, this term's a little overused in society these days, but that team is built different. They have 4 to 6 legitimate superstars, all of whom are at the peak of their powers right now. It's a sight to behold. The only thing, though, is Tampa's got a Vasilevsky. Colorado doesn't. So, I don't know. I still feel like I'm going with Colorado just because, I can't bring myself to bet against McKinnon and Makar and Landeskog and Rantanen and Taves. It's comical how stacked they are. But if there's a team that can do it, it's Tampa. But, a -180 on Colorado is about as good of odds as you're going to get on the Avalanche ever.
Yeah, if there's any team that can do it, it's Tampa. But I would still go with Colorado at this moment. They've lost 2 games. That is ridiculous. And they're just going. Now, thinking about it, Braden Point may be back for this series. We'll see how that works. It's going to be pretty hard for him to jump into the playoffs now that he's missed 2 rounds and it's now the Stanley Cup Final. But if he can play 60% of his capacity, he'll be a big addition to that team. So I'm going to say Colorado, but damn it, why do I feel like Tampa Bay could do it again and again and again? Yeah.
You mentioned, Evan, that Braden Point is likely to come back at some point in the series. They called it unlikely that he's back for game 1, which starts on Wednesday, so June 15th. But if they're saying Braden Point's going to come back at any point in the series, that's a big boon, right? Yeah, they got past a Rangers team without him. Colorado's a much taller task, and that's no slight on the Rangers. You can call Colorado the best team in the playoffs of all 16 teams, and you couldn't be called crazy for that. So they're going to need all hands on deck, and to know Point is coming back, that means something. Vasilevsky versus Darcy Kemper, who's coming off of injury, or let's say they, for one reason or another, Francouz comes back in for Kemper. It doesn't matter which way you cut it. Vasilevsky is a difference maker there, and not just he should be the better goalie, as in he has proven to be the best goalie in the world in clutch moments time and time again. And until he stops, until he falters when push comes to shove, in my mind, I can't bet against that.
Can you pick the Conn Smythe winners?
That's what we're going to do next. Yeah, so Vasilevsky is listed at a 450 alongside teammate Nikita Kucherov, a plus 450. The 2 favorites are Cale Makar at a plus 185 and Nathan MacKinnon at a plus 220, which lines up with Colorado being the favorites. Steven Stamkos is a distant plus 1,400, and then Darcy Kemper at plus 2,300. If Darcy Kemper comes in and dishes 4 shutouts, where Colorado's getting absolutely shelled, that's how he would do it. But all in all, I'd say unlikely. You're not wrong, Evan. Vasilevsky might be the move there, especially if you're like me and you think Tampa Bay is who you're going to bet on here. I think Vasilevsky at plus 450 is really good. But hey, Cale Makar. If Colorado wins, how do you not pick Cale Makar right now, right?
I think outside of Connor McDavid, I think he's been one of the best players in the game.
Yeah, period.
What was that one stat about defensemen having 5-point games in the playoffs? It's only happened 4 times in history, and Cale Makar has 2 of them this season. Obviously the Cup Finals determines a lot, so it's really hard, and that's why some of the longer odds like Vasilevsky are good bets. But between these 2 teams, if you were handing out the Conn Smythe today, it's Cale Makar, and it's not all that close.
All right, we're going to see how it unfolds. Thank you to the FanDuel Sportsbook for sponsoring that segment. We're excited to watch the Stanley Cup Final, unless you are of the mind of Brad Crisco, in which case, all the best in trying to get a 4-game sweep. If it is, well, blame Evan if you don't like that. All right, we're going to jump into overtime here, which is first and foremost brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, help support the show, give us the opportunity to run the show even during the Red Wings offseason, bring you all these prospect profiles, allow us to record remotely when Brad is mere inches away from death, and that is not a short joke. No, seriously, thank you all to all of our patrons. It really means the world. We were just chatting earlier today how significant it is that you guys allow us to do this. It means a lot. So patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Okay. Let's take some questions, starting with our patrons. Josh Brink says, with the Bolts going to their 3rd straight finals, it got me thinking, who do you think is the team of the salary cap era? Meaning the franchise that embodied success in this version of the NHL. Unfortunately, I think it's Pittsburgh, 3 cups, 4 appearances, constant contender, but I think Tampa can make a case now.
3 straight Cup Finals is insane. For me, it is Tampa, as much as that pains me to admit, because it's easy to think just in recency bias, and obviously you'd assume it's recency bias, but man, Tampa, this isn't their 3rd Cup Final in the salary cap era. It's their 4th. And the only reason they lost to the Hawks that year was their starting goalie and one of their star players were injured for the Cup Finals. 2 of their star players, actually, I believe. And then they've had multiple Game 7 losses, at least 1 Game 7 loss in the conference finals along the way as well. They have been in the Final 4 as much or more than anybody in the cap era. So I don't know. Like, you can make a case for Pittsburgh. You can make a case for Chicago. Obviously, that's tainted now. But yeah, for me, it's still Tampa.
So, question here from Ryan Hanna's missed year of development. It says, seeing either Tampa or Colorado win the cup this year will make me cringe a little. Got me wondering, though, what teams would make up the most reprehensible cup final? My vote is Chicago, Toronto. Oh, that would
was
be
mine.
That's the one.
For Red Wings fans, that is just like the most pure guttural hatred towards both teams.
Yeah. Obviously, there's worse combinations, but they're all in the Eastern Conference beyond Chicago, primarily. So, yeah, Toronto, Chicago is the worst. I'd say a close second would be Boston, Chicago, but we've already had that one, so we can, check that one off.
Question here from Rick Choate says, since this season had the highest goal scoring since 95-96 and the lowest save percentages we've seen since 06-07, what are the chances you guys put on players demanding higher contracts this year and those numbers regressing more to the mean of previous years and lots of teams are left with players underperforming those contracts? I'm just imagining plenty of teams regretting some contracts if those numbers regress.
Well, this is not really a fully fair statement, because everything is relative, right? If, let's say Johnny Gaudreau puts up 110 points this year and commands X dollars. Scoring regresses, he puts up 95 points in a few years. Again, hypothetically. So he drops by 15 points. But if almost everybody else in the league is dropping by 15 points-ish, give or take 5, and scoring is down across the league, percentage-wise and relatively speaking, he's still the same level above his peers, which means he's still getting paid the appropriate percentage. So it may look bad, but again, this is one of the things that makes the salary cap so tricky because it's all relative.
All right, comment here from patron Jeremy Dahl, who's getting married today. Jeremy, congratulations to you and your fiance, who will probably be your wife by the time you're listening to this, Miss Chantel Suzanne Natasha Dahl. Congratulations to both of you. I hope you had a perfect day with little stress, and congratulations. A hockey question from Jeremy. How much do you have to play in the playoffs to get your name on the cup? Like, will Kadri get his name on the cup even though he missed the entire last round? And would you feel happy to get your name on the cup if you were him, knowing you missed the last round of the playoffs? Thanks, guys. I look forward to listening to you before I go to bed on my wedding night. Oh, man, you can delay it if you want. It's your wedding night. The qualifications to get a player on the cup are generally having played half the season or one game in the Stanley Cup Final. So 41 games or whatever the season is if it's shortened, and or one game in the Stanley Cup Final. Teams do have a certain amount of names that they can throw on there. The number like 55 or 52 or something is sticking out in my mind, and they can petition to have players in extenuating circumstances having their names added, which are approved or not by the league. But generally, you got to play a game in the Stanley Cup Final or play half the season. And okay, let's say you're Kadri and you miss a Stanley Cup Final. In my mind, he would still want his name on the cup. I'd feel great about that. Who cares? Not your fault you got injured.
So how many guys have never won a cup? That would kill to be a healthy scratch for 98% of the playoffs, but still get their name on the cup.
And that's happened before. Like Black Aces, players who were called up from the AHL to basically just man the roster in case of devastating injury. By the final round, attrition has taken place and there has been devastating injury. And there's a guy who will play like literally 4 minutes in game 5 or game 3 of a 7-game series. His team will win and his name goes on the cup. And he'll never play a regular season game with that team again for the rest of his career. Or that might be it. Their name is on the cup just because that's how it qualifies. So yeah, it certainly happens. And you know those players, it does mean something to them. I could see people thinking, oh, I would want to be more meaningful, to have a more meaningful role in a cup final run. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's going to complain. From Kodak Black's Date says, hey guys, I was just thinking about Yzerman's past 3 first-round picks with Detroit, and I just can't see him making a safer pick like Casper. Seider was a big swing, Raymond was a safer pick, and Edvinsson had some issues at the time. He's reformed. I know trying to predict who he's going to pick is impossible, but I just think if he's going to swing, it should be Savoy. Also, 100% Hronek is moved by next deadline. He's signed short-term and he's not worth the money he's making, but I'm sure some team needs a right-handed D. I want to comment on Kasper. I've mentioned that we're going to have to revisit him. I don't really necessarily believe that he's a safer pick. I think he's less flashy of a player, in my opinion, but he checks a lot of boxes. And I think a lot of credit is given to, okay, look at Simon Nemec. He was called a not flashy player, but he would be a no-brainer for the Red Wings at 8. He'd be a no-brainer for a lot of teams at 3, 4, or 5 even. I think you can't really pigeonhole Kasper as a safer pick. I think he's a little bit more of an unknown quantity for me in terms of what his overall ceiling is. But, being certain that he's going to play center, that makes it a little bit more of a high-end pick. I'm not sure that that's where I fall, but I struggle to call him a safe pick.
I don't like the term safe pick, period. And I know I've talked about this before, and we'll use it for context every once in a while. I don't think, the quote unquote safeness of whatever you want to classify it as between Savoie and Kasper matters. I just think Savoie's more talented, so that's why he should be the pick. Could you argue Kasper's got a lower ceiling, higher floor? Yeah, sure. That makes sense. But is it a safe pick if the guy you picked at 8th overall is your 4th line center? No, not really. That's still a failure relative to the pick. So yeah, Stevie looks for the highest skill he can get in a highly competitive player. So there's a lot of players who check that box in and around where the Red Wings are picking.
Chill Jazz R&B Vibes says, I think they're making fun of a playlist I put in the Discord once, says, do you think the Red Wings make a run at anyone in the Hawks like Doc, DeBrincat, or Strome? Also, is there any interest in trading for the number 2 pick? DeBrincat or Doc, yes, of course, but those are going to be pricey players in my mind. You would almost want to take a look at what it would take to get Doc, right? Because if you believe in Kirby Dach as a player, now is the time to buy, because his value would be lower now than later. Unless you don't think he's all that he was chalked up to be at the position he was drafted. But hey, for the Red Wings who are looking for centerman of the future, Kirby Dach could be an answer. Potentially.
Some would say so. Not everybody. Not me.
Where do you fall, Brad?
Yzerman's not doing his job if he's not calling. But yeah, I don't. For what they would cost, I will call it a long shot.
All right, time for some Reddit questions. We have time for a couple. Jarumba says, this may be a dumb question, but why can't Lucas Raymond play center and be our number 2C? Players switch between positions a lot over their career. There's nothing to say Lucas Raymond couldn't play center. I think he has the brain for it, but there's a little cost benefit analysis, right? Like on a much smaller level, look at the experiment of moving Robbie Fabry to center when the Red Wings really needed one. It worked. It was fine, but he's much better served as a winger.
It can be done, but you have to be the right type of player, and it does add a lot more responsibility to your plate. And I know we had this conversation a bit in previous episodes, but obviously this is something I can relate to a little bit because I got moved to center partway through the season this year, and I hadn't played center since minor hockey. But it's even the little things like the game within the game. The centerman in any level of pro hockey is responsible for being kind of the general on the ice. You are the number one communicator. You are setting everybody up before a draw. You are, yelling for coverages or yelling for switches, or that when the coach is talking to your line on the bench, he's addressing your line. He expects your line mates to be listening, but he's yelling at you. And then you get into the actual positionality of it. Well, he's quick, but he's not fast, which usually helps at center. Again, it's not a prerequisite, but Raymond's more of a specialist in the way he plays. I think his game's suited to the wing. Could he play center? Yes, I think he's talented enough and mature enough and competitive enough to play center. Do I think his skill set as it is maximized at center? No, I do not, which is the question a lot of coaches ask of a lot of players at a lot of stops along their career. So if you see someone like Lucas Raymond, who's supremely skilled, but has played winger in junior, in the J20, in the SHL, in the World Juniors, in the NHL. There's a reason for that. It's because every one of his coaches thought he was better on the wing and he was maximized on the wing. So if you can take a guy like that and have him hyper focus on a few things, which is the benefit of being a winger and why people consider winger to be a little easier, do it. It's not a bad thing. Like, I feel like because Red Wings fans have got so deep in this hole of we need a center and it's such a talking point around the draft, we devalue wingers because of it, but no, it's still super important, and a guy like Raymond fills that.
All right. Last question here. Let's go from Let's Kill Time. It says, last year the Hawks tried to beef up their roster by acquiring Jones and gave up a first, which turns out to be a top 10 pick in the draft for the Jackets. Which team do you think Stevie could trade Burt or Hronek to and end up with a high first rounder due to the other team being not that good? It's an interesting question, and you kind of need like a perfect formula of a team being very stupid, which Chicago was, especially being at the time. I don't know. I don't think you should bet against Boston, but if they have their personnel go against them and that they don't get Bergeron back and Krejci doesn't return, but they still want to try to compete. They have a lot of injuries there. They might try to shore up. That could be one. What kind of push?
You have to look for that. You have to look for that team that thinks they're better than they are and they want to beef up. I was going to say Buffalo feels like they're probably ready to take a step, but Kevin Adams has actually been pretty good since he got there. The team that I kind of circle for this as they're so bad, and I don't think their GM realizes it, is Philly. They still think that they are not going into a rebuild, which is certainly a choice. So they may be the candidate for the bad team that thinks they're good. And if you're looking at the team that's on the up and up, that is probably at a good window to be aggressive, but if enough goes wrong for them, they could be really bad again. Maybe New Jersey. And they're both being aggressive. So those are the two I kind of zero in on.
Ottawa it really depends on how gutsy they get. Although their whole ownership question and what's going to happen there, you don't know how long Pierre Dorian's going to last there. If he stays, then maybe I think that's a little bit more likely. But yeah, that's another one to me where it might happen. It's hard.
It makes sense. The rebuild's over.
Yeah, they did say it. Okay, why don't we wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast? Brad, we'll give you an opportunity to recover. Hopefully we'll be back in studio next episode. And hopefully you're there to join us and feeling a lot better. Hate to hear you like this, buddy. It makes it harder to make fun of you. Although you did dish it back to me pretty good on Twitter. I almost fell off the couch laughing. All right. Why don't we wrap up? Thank you all so much for supporting the show. We'd like to thank all of you for listening. Our name level supporters on Patreon, the heart and soul behind the show. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels, on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, the Stay Fresh Cheese Bag, Nick Perks, Brett Bailey, Terry Driver of the number 69, Cryan Ryan, Hannah's Banana Slam and Jamathong, Matthew M. Rice, Brandon M., Carl Brutanen Analuski, Chimmy, Chumbawamba Not Chumbawamba, Citizen High Five, Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe, Craig Kibble, Derek Ensdam, DJ Denton, Doesn't Tuesnit, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Greach, Helm Was Held Back by Blashill, Hassam Al-Qassem, I'd Leave My Wife for Cider, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Kalen Wood, King Tone, Kyle Hashman, Marcus, Matt McKay, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Sean Levine, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Zach Spring, Sam Bengtson, Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, Adam Now I Finish Better Than Ernie, Antonio Gracias, Babe Landeskog, Ben Barron, Connor Leightonen, Dave W., Evans Parking Garage, Evans Bingo Card, I Miss Evans Rich Man's Laugh, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, Jeremy Brocker, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, Josh Yelton, Justin and the Angry Mob, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Matt Keeler, Matt S., Maximilian Cheesebags, Papa Woody, Puck Norris, Revi DeLuca, Trevor Pevovar, Wish.com Shea Weber, and Zach McCann, a driving range superstar, as well as Zegras is always greener. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back with you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.